Good morning. I'm going to play a clip for you guys, and I want you guys to tell me what you guys think it is. Those of you who know cars, who has an idea of what kind of car this might be? Anybody? This car is a Ford GT. It is a Ford. Everyone knows Fords. How many of you at least drive a Ford or have driven a Ford before? At least 4 or 5 people. It's a widely recognized brand. Ford Motor Company was created in August of 1899. Henry Ford was born in Dearborn, Michigan, and he has been an American icon ever since. Everyone is familiar with the Ford emblem. It is on all Ford vehicles, and today I'm going to describe to you how Henry Ford's innovative ideas changed manufacturing. I've been researching this topic for several weeks. I have many different sources from websites and encyclopedias. I've also been to the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, and my dad has worked in the auto industry for over 30 years, including working for Ford Motor Company. I'm sure many of you use a car on a daily basis. All cars are created by the same method, the assembly line, which was part of Ford's invention. For those of you who do not know about Henry Ford, I wanted to explain a little bit about him. He was born in Michigan on July 30th, 1863. He grew up on his family farm. On the website about inventors, Mary Bellin writes, from the time he was a young boy, Ford enjoyed tinkering with machines. He had a strong interest in machines, which led Ford to create his own invention. Ford worked many years developing new models of cars and proclaimed, "I will build a car for the great multitude." Ford went on to fulfill his promise in October 1908 when he introduced the Model T. This is a picture of the Model T that Ford invented. This was his greatest accomplishment, well, one of his greatest accomplishments. The first Model T sold for only $950. Over the next 19 years, the price of the car continued to drop and went as low as $180. Ford was an enormous success and sold over 15,500,000 in the United States alone, almost 1 million in Canada, and 250,000 in Great Britain. The overwhelming amount of sales have led Ford to create a more efficient way of manufacturing cars. These facts were also provided by Carol Gelderman of Britannica Encyclopedia. I'm going to discuss how Ford's inventions of the assembly line and changes he made in the workplace have led to mass production. First, I want to explain how the invention of the assembly line was formed. Due to the high demand of the Model T, Ford was compelled to create a more efficient way of production. Ford then, in turn, created the assembly line. By increasing the production rate, Ford was able to produce cars efficiently and at a lower cost. Using these innovative production techniques, Ford was able to complete a chassis every 93 minutes. A chassis is the frame of the car. It's usually rectangular in shape and made of steel. The new speed of production was attributed to the assembly line method. Assembly line production of the Model T took the action of building a car and broke it down into specific and separate tasks. A different worker performs each task until the product is complete. This is an example of what an assembly line looks like at the Ford factory, where each person is working on a different task. I'm sorry about the image. These were back in 1904, 1914, so the images are a little distorted. Not only does the assembly line decrease the time production, but also the cost of labor decreases because skilled workers are no longer as important. The introduction of the moving conveyor belt increased production in the assembly line manufacturing process. Using the conveyor involved careful coordination of operations and subdivision of labor. Has anyone ever seen a factory and knows a factory that uses a conveyor with an assembly line? Has anyone ever seen that? All factories pretty much, they make popcorn that way, they make soaps that way, cars that way, shoes, clothes. Pretty much everything that you're wearing comes from a factory. Cars, desks, it all comes from a factory, and they use conveyor belts. This is an example of what it looks like on a conveyor belt. There are cars along here moving with the chassis in their frame, and they move along, and each worker is doing different things. Cars assembled today are also used in this, Using Ford's techniques, many other companies, including Dodge Brothers and General Motors Chevrolet and Chrysler, began using these models. This is a picture of General Motors using Ford's implementation of the conveyor belt and assembly line. Now you know how Henry Ford developed an efficient way to produce cars. Next, I'm going to share with you how he made changes in the workplace. The workers were being paid, and the hours they were working were not acceptable to Ford. The typical day for a worker was a 9-hour shift at $2.34 a day. Ford changed this by making an 8-hour workday, which is still in place today, and changing the minimum wage to $5 a day. Ford's advances in employee wages and workdays made him an international celebrity. Working for Ford became very popular. He also came up with new policies to help the physically and mentally handicapped and develop schools for English language for the large immigrant workforce he had working for them. He claimed, however, not to believe in conventional charity, rather provide opportunities for people to help themselves. Finally, the invention of the assembly line and changes in the workplace are what led to mass production. Mass production is producing any product in large quantities at a low cost. The development of mass production was Henry Ford's greatest accomplishment. Without this accomplishment, Ford Motor Company would not have been able to produce quality products at an affordable price. Henry Ford's impact on the world is beyond measure. His introduction of the automobile into mass market transformed agricultural economies in the United States and around the world into prosperous industrial ones. StatesFord.com. Ford's devotion to putting money back in the pocket was revolutionary and spreading wealth throughout management and his workers. Today I have described to you how Henry Ford's invention of the assembly line, changes he made in the workplace, have led to mass production, not only in the automotive industry, but throughout the mass market business. You can now see without Ford's inventions, ideas, manufacturing would not be what it is today.
All right, who's doing the oral evaluation? All right.
Okay, first, I really liked how you got us all involved with the sound clip and asking questions. It became really obvious what you were talking about. The thesis was really well stated. I thought everything flowed really nicely. And the visuals were really good too, for an overview.
All right, you don't have to stand in front of us. Well,
I don't mind.
You feel a little bit. Yeah, it's okay if you
better.
do. That's fine. But I like the attention device a lot. I thought you had excellent identification of the topics. You gave us a good justification. There's a very clear thesis statement, so we know what you're going to be talking about. The one thing that I didn't really hear very clearly was a preview of the contents. Now, you did signpost internally as you were moving from point to point, so I think the setup would have helped a little bit. At the end, you had a nice summary, so sometimes the summary can kind of rescue your organizational structure and kind of look back and see, okay, now I see how things are being put together, and I think that you helped yourself a little bit that way, but I think it would have been clearer if the preview had been more explicit at the beginning. You had a lot of good information that you presented. The presentation style, we're not emphasizing that right now, but I thought you did a very good job. You were fluid, you were continuous in your presentation, you've got a very forceful voice, and you seem like you're interested in the subject matter, so that all comes across very effectively. The visual materials, you use them at appropriate times. The only thing that I had a little bit of a problem with is that I think you needed to adjust the focus a bit. It's not that complicated. It's just a little bit off. I know you apologized about the pictures at one point, but I think the bigger problem was that you just needed to turn that knob a quarter of an inch one way or the other. And even though the pictures are a little bit old and antiquated, we just still seen them a little bit more sharply. All right. Thank you very much.